share with you what we do as Proudly South African, what our mandate is and why we exist. But also zooming into the actual topic around unlocking your business potential. Thank you so much once again for joining us this morning. And so without further ado, let's get straight into it. So unlocking your business potential, I would like to believe that online we have a number of delegates who are business owners, who are keen to find out, around the issues of unlocking your business potential. You may be already in business, of course, but your work is cut out for you. Running a business is not for the faint-hearted. Many of you on the line will know that. It's a constant, I call it an extreme sport, an extreme sport because you're constantly running, constantly thinking about how to turn around your business, constantly looking for opportunity, constantly really fighting a good fight to stay afloat as a business, to stay relevant. And ultimately, what matters the most is the revenue, generating revenue for your business. And in the context of the work that Proudly South African does, is that in the course of doing your work and running your business, then you employ more people, hopefully, and you sustain the jobs that you currently have. And so quickly, we are the Buy Local campaign in South Africa. I just want to briefly touch on that. The CEO of Proudly South African, Mr. Eustace Mashimbe, will zoom into that quite extensively. But our job, in a nutshell, is to influence local procurement, to remind South Africans about the importance of buying local and about the importance of sustaining jobs in South Africa for the betterment of our economy. And so in a nutshell, that's what we do. There's a lot of work we do in all spheres of the economy, private sector, public sector, and by and large, consumers. And now going back into the discussion, I want to encourage you online to please engage with us, send your questions on the chat box. We will have a Q&A session later on. I encourage you to jot your questions down, and we will unpack them as we go along. And with that said, please, help me to welcome, our first speaker that we have online, Mr. Alan Mukoki, who is the Chief Executive Officer from the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry, a brother, in the industry, a friend of the campaign, and in my personal capacity, we have a lovely journey over the past few years. Great to see you, and Mukoki, and thank you so much for being gracious with your time to engage us, in this forum. And you will be talking to us about, or giving us an overview, rather, of SACCI and the services offered by your organization for the benefit of businesses, local businesses in South Africa. Over to you.
Thank you, Makhumalo, and good morning to all the colleagues and all the partners of Proudly SA. We are, of course, as SACCI, very encouraged and excited about the partnership that we can have with Proudly SA, because we, as a South African National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, we consider ourselves to be a national organization that is interested in the success of South Africa. To that extent, the pillars that we have in terms of our strategic intent are based largely on what we can do to turn this place around. A few years ago, we went to our own members in the South African Chamber of Commerce, because every time when you go into business, you need to be able to explain what are the reasons that justify your existence. We still play the role of being the intersecting role between big business, big government, big labor, and community groups at NEDLAC. As you would all know, NEDLAC is obviously a chamber forum where big business, big government go in to discuss any issues relating to policy, regulation, and legislation. Something as simple as the minimum wage, for instance, would be a piece of legislation that is navigated through NEDLAC long before it gets into law, because that's the constitutional framework and arrangement that NEDLAC comes through a piece of legislation called the NEDLAC Act, and then it has its own founder members. And I think that SACCI, or in our old name, SACOP, is one of the founding members. And later what we did when the government was trying to unite all of business formations, because business formations in South Africa were differentiated on tribe and ethnicity. So we are the old Anglo-Saxon Protestant organization, the old SACOP, and then you had the Afrikaans Handels Institute, who recently changed their name to Small Business Institute. And then you had NAFCOC, and which NAFCOC has obviously developed into what today is referred to as BBC, the Black Business Council, with many, many other participating organizations that look after key areas of transformation and inclusion and diversity around what's happening to the South African economy. So we then got together with all our members and we went back to them. We asked them a series of 6 questions, and I won't go through all of them given the constraints of time. But one of the key questions that we asked was, what are the reasons that justify the existence of SACCI, of the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry? And when we asked that question, it's actually a series of 6 questions. And I do always encourage many people who are in business to look at those questions, because they may appear to be very simple, yet they are very, very highly researched and very impactful. So the first question quite clearly is, what are the reasons that justify your existence? Anyone who goes into business needs to give the reasons that add value of why they should actually exist. The second question is an identification of the key stakeholders. And in this case, we narrowed the definition of stakeholder into those who receive things from us. In other words, so we didn't want to go to talk about people who are, for instance, suppliers and in the broader government environment, regulators, but those that should receive something from us. In other words, those that we are serving with either a product or a service or advice, whatever the nature of the product is. And thirdly, we needed to identify the things that we do for others. In other words, if you're a member of the South African Chamber of Commerce, what exactly is this that you do? We have to be very specific and very clear, concise, comprehensible and complete, so that when you say something, people are not still waiting to ask you questions about what you've just said because of lack of clarity or incomplete information that you're giving. We needed to identify the other question, the features and the qualities that these things should have to delight the key stakeholder. We then had to come to the review question, which is, when will we know when this has happened? In other words, it's important to always go back to check whether what you think you're actually doing is meeting the expectations of those that you are doing it for. I've always said as an executive for many years that there are 2 areas that you always try to protect in any organization, that you try to protect from managerial influence and politics. One is the area of audits, whether they're internal or external audits, and the other is the area of customer perceptions about your services. In other words, people will go and do research and try and come back independently to tell you how your customers actually are experiencing you in terms of your brand, in terms of the experiences that they have, whether that is time, whether servicing, whether, after sales effects, all those particular pieces. That's very, very key to be able to deal with that particular question. So you know it in your strategic framework as we begin. The last question, of course, relates to when will we know when this has happened? And that's a resources question, because it deals with the resource allocation that's required, whether it's people, systems, cash, machines, and anything else that you need to ensure that you can actually succeed. And invariably, therefore, what our members came back to us to tell us on was that you, as the South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry, you need to focus on these 7 pillars. In other words, these are the things that you should be concerning yourself with: resourcing, campaign, lobby, and fight to drive in the South African environment. And I think that if they have my slide, you can just put up that slide with the pillars. And then we then move on to say one of the critical elements of what we do is dealing with the idea of economic growth and job creation. That's very, very, very key, because we need to know that when we say we actually exist, we exist because we have to drive those kinds of policies and campaigns and marketing in the areas where we know that this is going to grow the economy. So when we consult our members on any of the aspects of policy formulation that the government is doing or the ruling party is doing, so we've gone to all the ruling party policy conferences to participate, because we do get to be asked to make comments about anything that they themselves are looking at. So when you do that, you always have to have this, what is the socio-economic impact of what the government is trying to do, whether at a local, provincial, or national level, whether it's an SOE, whether it's any of the institutions basically that support government in that particular regard. So that becomes a very, very key idea in terms of why are you doing that and how is it going to impact anything. Of course, our republic is a very noisy one. There's a lot of contestation, sometimes even definitional problems relating specifically to how we define something. So to us, inclusivity or diversity isn't something that we're talking about only in the context of it's a nice thing to have, or that we want people to have or benefit from the democracy dividend. Those things are also important. But the key one is that when you look at inclusivity and diversity, it is a necessary core pillar when it comes to how you can grow the economy. As a matter of fact, if you look at the World Economic Forum, they've got 12 pillars about how a country can become competitive. One of the elements of those 12 is the size of your market. So your size of your market determines how competitive you are rated as a country. So long before the ratings agencies come in to have a look, whether it's a sovereign ratings agency model, they have a look at how competitive you are, should we put money, should we drive investment into your economy. They are also as concerned whether you actually do have a market to begin with. There's no point in a foreign investor coming into a country like South Africa to invest, to plug in a plant and machinery when South Africa itself is not actually providing a market. And by saying inclusivity, we mean growing incomes, broad incomes, an expanded framework of enabling those people that are outside of the economic cycle to get into the economic cycle. So it's a business imperative as opposed to it being a garage buy. You know, they say people don't wash a rented car, right? So a car belongs to Avis. You only wash it because it's so dirty, it's inconveniencing you, but generally people don't wash a rented car. So we never wanted business to think transformation is a rented car, something that they want to buy in a gradual way. And that's a leadership question, because when you start to make people to understand that by including all these women, by including all these youthful people, because South Africa is still more than 75% in terms of our population, populated by people below the age of 35. So it's a young community in terms of our citizens. And we therefore need to make sure those people are part of the economy, because that's how our own organizations are actually going to become successful. They're going to become big. We can create behemoths of organizations that are 10, 20 times bigger purely by developing our own local market. I will not go through all of them, but one of them, as you would see, is the area of policy. And we deal with the area of policy in the context of what do we mean by policy. We mean what we mean, that we have to engage very actively, but we engage in a way that is very different. In other words, we don't try to be arrogant or haughty. We are not trying to suggest we know better. It is always important to create the necessary and conducive environment when you are creating or co-creating a particular output that you want or desired outcome that you want with partners. It's not going to be helpful to us as the South African Chamber of Commerce to be insulting those people that we work with. And yes, some of our members would complain very vociferously sometimes to say, you guys are very soft on government, you're being very diplomatic. No, we're not. We may well be, we always say that we're very hardwired, tough minds, but soft hearts. In other words, the most intense of discussions that can ever take place with anyone that you're with are the ones that are done in a way that is collegial, where there's a lot of respect in the atmosphere, where there's a lot of humility. Because when you have humility, you yourself know that you can work and you can learn, because there isn't much that you're going to learn in an environment where there is lack of humility. We can't come in and only assume that as business or the psyche, we are the only people who've got the solutions. We need to come in first, seek first to understand before you can be understood. So we need to also understand what is it that our partners are doing, so that we have a very intimate knowledge with what they are doing, so that we ourselves can then make our contribution in an environment where we actually did understand where they stand in terms of the various elements. And there's talent all over the place in South Africa. There's talent in the public sector. Of course, the perception is different because there is the perception that there's an asymmetry in terms of skills and competences between the private and the public sector. No, not at all. We've met some unbelievably talented people in the public sector who can really make a massive contribution to the development of our country in making sure that we find the right policies. So I've dealt with the transformation piece around inclusivity of the economic diversity purely as a business imperative, because we need a South Africa that is growing. Yes, that would then give you a democracy dividend and make sure that you stabilize the republic. There are not too many, for people who are young, because the majority of people in this country are young, there are not too many leadership opportunities in the world today, except in places like maybe the ASEAN countries that include Bali, Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand, Singapore, and places like that, those 10 ASEAN countries, as well as Africa itself. And so our play in terms of talking about regional development is that South Africa cannot grow its economy if it simply relies on only the South African market. Our responsibility is to make sure that we, as South Africa, as I'm mentioning these big ASEAN countries, there's 650 million people in the ASEAN countries, the Association of Southeastern Nations. 650 million, and economies, they are growing between 5-7 points. Indonesia. Hello?
Mr. Mukoki, hi, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I just want to make you aware that your slides are not moving.
Oh,
so we're
okay.
still stuck on your opening slide.
No, that's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah. We will distribute the slides anyway, so you don't have to worry about that. So I will speak to them in any event. So, but we will send the community the slides.
Fabulous.
Yeah. So I was dealing with the issue of regional cooperation and development. It's very important because we've dealt in an environment in South Africa for many years where people assume that Africa is out there. South Africans have a tendency of thinking that South Africa is a very small piece of Europe, lost somewhere in the tip of the south of Africa. Yet that is not actually the truth. The truth of the matter is that South Africa presents for us the biggest opportunity to grow our economy sustainably over many years. Why? Because most of the capital remains here in South Africa, where we're either number one or number two, we're always exchanging places, swapping places with Egypt all the time, and sometimes Nigeria on the size of our economy. So we've got sufficient levels of capital, we've got the technology, we've got the management skills and the consulting skills, we've got the engineering skills, we've got the IT skills, and what we are missing in the equation is having a mindset shift, right? So we have a mindset problem as South Africans. We don't have a problem with whether we've got skills, at least at a technical level, to be able to drive that particular level of agenda. When I'm mentioning those ASEAN countries, I like to make this point. The three big problems that we're facing in South Africa, unemployment, poverty, and inequality, they require us to be able to solve those matters that the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals are talking about, those 17 SDGs. In fact, even if you simply focus on the top 10 of those SDGs, including things like zero hunger, no poverty, good health and well-being, good education, infrastructure, manufacturing, and all those particular things, access to clean, affordable energy, access to clean sanitation and water, and all those particular elements. It's because South Africa needs to move away from being a developing economy into becoming a developed economy. In the last 100 years, only about 8 non-Western countries have managed to move their economies from developing to developed. And you count amongst those Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, Old Hong Kong, Singapore, Australia, Russia, and Israel. Those are the only 8 non-Western countries that have managed to move their economies from developing to developed in the last 100 years, right? And of course, there is a consensus that China and Brazil are the 2 that are most likely to make the grade as developed economies in the next 10 years. Yes, China may well be the second biggest, largest economy in the world today, but we're talking here about being developed, because when we mean developed, we mean look at those UN SDGs and then measure yourself against how you are performing. So if you still have poverty levels, you have hunger problems, you have that level of inequality, it means you are not yet performing at the level of a developed economy. Once you become a developed economy, you're able to attract a huge level of investment, and many, many people who are investors, they come into your country. So these things are linked. So we talk transformation, we're not talking about it in the context of complying with government regulations, but we need to change the leadership mindset in South Africa that makes us to capture the dividends that we are going to all get, building this economy, growing it at 5-7 points over the next 30 years so that we solve all these problems in a way that is very, very, very permanent. So I'm making that point, and the reason I'm making that point about those 8 countries, if you go to Asia, and you mentioned those 10 countries that I say are in the group of ASEAN countries, the people who are driving the most of the investment capital and deploying most of the capital also happen to be these former Asian tigers. People always say, yeah, China is fighting with Taiwan, but what they don't actually realize that is Taiwan is heavily invested in mainland China. They are driving a lot of the investment there. And the same Singapore, the same Taiwan, the same Japan have been the same, Hong Kong have been the same people who are driving most of the investment in the ASEAN countries, and that's why you see that level of development. South Africa has a similar opportunity with the rest of the region, with the rest of the continent. We need to fix these things that we refer to as the 4 lines to heaven. We need to put in the investment, the capital investment in building the power systems, not just complaining about Eskom alone, because, oh yeah, we're struggling with Eskom. Eskom is only a local problem. South Africa is electrified 85% mostly, and the rest of Africa less than 10%. It's a big, huge opportunity that we have to campaign and lobby for us to build those power systems in the rest of the continent so that what? So that we open opportunities for growth and development. There is no country in the world that is as rich and wealthy in terms of natural resources as the DRC. Africa, as a matter of fact, is very, very, very rich. And many of you may well be familiar with the huge big gas finds that just happened in Namibia over the last year, but it's on exactly the same basin that's coming into South Africa. So if you find gas in Namibia, so much of it, 500 trillion cubic, you are going to find exactly the same amount of gas on the South African side. And I know both Total and Shell, they plugged in about $500 million of investment in there. So this is going to be a major, major, major opportunity in terms of the things that we all can do as South Africans. And that's what we are focused on as a chamber. The second line to heaven is to build the rail infrastructure, because in a number of cases, I'm watching my time, in a number of cases, we have a situation where, of course, we are rich, we have commodities, but we can't move those commodities because of infrastructure constraints in South Africa as the rest of the continent. So we do need, South Africa's got about 23,000, from what I hear, 23,000 kilometers of rail, and we need to get ourselves to that 1 million kilometers of rail so that we can move both goods and people very, very, very fast, so that we can create this economy. So these are the things we must focus on. The third element, of course, is to build the water and sanitation infrastructure. While we complain in South Africa about we don't have water, you know, the rest of Africa has got sufficient water. There's more water in that Great Lakes region to plant anything. It is our technology, it is our agroeconomists and soil experts who should be going and looking outward to go and build all those opportunities for our economy outside of South Africa. And what we need to then to be able to do is to change our leadership mindset. It's all about mindset in South Africa. South Africa is too negative as a country, and a lot of work needs to be done in the media. Organizations like Proudly SA, organizations like Brand SA, organizations like ourselves, we also need to find the beautiful stories. You can't just be the Springboks, you know, the one and won the World Cup when we were all so scared and so exhausted and so anxious during the game. There are many, many, many areas that we can focus on as South Africans to build that. In the interest of time, Makhumalo, I think let me leave my presentation here. Oh, sorry, let me just mention the other one is a telecoms infrastructure build that is very much key and required as one of those 4 lines. Why am I saying that? It's because if education, for instance, is one of our challenges from a skills and competences environment, and then access then becomes an issue, that you've got kids sitting in Limpopo somewhere, deep in KwaZulu-Natal, like Wanongoma, but they're not able to access the Wits University Economics 302 lecture. The solutions exist today. So we need to build a high-speed fiber. We need to build a telecoms infrastructure with satellite to get into those rural areas so that we can give these kids accessibility. And that's why the spectrum needs to move from the SABC so it can come into public hands so that many people who've got tech ideas to build the infrastructure will do that. Why are we saying that? You will notice, and many of the people on the call here would be very young people, you'll notice big platforms, IT platforms, software and application platforms like Coursera. About 130 universities are driving content for free on Coursera. Big universities, big name universities will go and drive content for free for training and development, right? And in many cases where you're expected to pay, you're only expected to pay a very small fee. Basically, it's almost like a contribution. Even then, if you do want to have a certificate that says Yale University and you did the top negotiations course that Yale does on Coursera, for instance, it takes 9 weeks. That course, I remember doing it about 3 years ago. The videos that you must see for class interaction about HDMI, right? 1 hour a day, you need 5 hours of content. In the context of South Africa, if you're using your own data, it would cost about 2 gigs of data to watch a full 60-minute HDMI video. So it's inaccessible. Yet when you release the spectrum and you drive this tech investment and infrastructure that you need with high-speed fiber, what then happens? The cost of you watching a 1 hour video is very, very, very affordable. It goes to something like 10 cents or even 12 cents an hour. And that is the story of what we want to tell about South Africa. When you then do that, that kid who's sitting in Kwanongoma is able to access that Economics 302 lecture without complaining about fees must fall. And what we then need to be able to do is to give them the energy power, whether we go via satellite, whether we go via solar, whether we go via any wind project, to make sure that they are actually going to be. And that's how you develop the country, because if you don't have skills and competencies, you are not actually going to succeed in doing that. So in the interest of time, let me leave it there, Makhumalo, and I'm sure we will take any questions that arise later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mokoki. Thank you so much. Yes, you do have a, I see Facebook is active, and there's 1 or 2 questions for you there, which we'll take just shortly. And thank you so much for that insight. And I'm hoping that those of us online have absorbed everything you had to share with us, which is fantastic. And there's a greater emphasis from what you shared with us on strengthening our infrastructure. You also touched on the issues of the significance of education. By the way, a profession that I have the utmost respect for, because without that, education, we wouldn't even be having this discussion. Everything starts around the, education. So hence I say it's a profession I have the utmost respect for. Great to see that you are a member-based campaign. In fact, it takes me to the point I want to make, that as a business person, you've got to pay yourself, not necessarily monetary, in monetary terms, but pay yourself by affiliating yourself with organizations such as SACI, such as Proudly South African, because we also, a membership-based campaign for the benefit of your business and for access to market opportunities. It's one thing to have a great company, great business, great product, but if you don't have a market to sell your service or your product to, it defeats the purpose, right? And you also quickly touched on the triple challenges, inequality, unemployment, and poverty, which is actually, Proudly South African was formed on the back of this by Utata Madiba, Nelson Mandela, 22 years ago at the very first job summit, and that's how we came into existence as Proudly South African. Unfortunately, triple challenges that are still, persistent and a problem for us as South Africa. Thank you so much, Mr. Mokoki, for the valuable contribution. Just to say that please send your questions on the platform, engage with us. This discussion and this session is for you. It's not about just us coming online and presenting and and walking away and ticking a box. It's really meant to engage and interact with us as much as you possibly can. Listen, you did mention, the spirit of camaraderie, the spirit of joy and patriotism, around our win. as a country, given the historic win by Amabogobogo, but more to South Africa than just that. I couldn't agree with you more. But it also reminded me that I'm actually, captured by bokeh fever, and I slept on the job earlier on and neglected to specifically mention the speakers that we do have online today. So we do have Mrs. Dimagazo Manuela, who is director at Be Leisure Africa, who will be talking about supporting women in expanding their horizon in the context of unlocking your business potential. We have a good friend of the campaign, Mr. Saki Zamtlaga, who is the Chief Executive Officer, Gauteng Enterprise Propeller, who will be talking to funding services available for small businesses within his organization. And then we'll hear from Mr. Eustace Mashimbie, who is Chief Executive Officer for Proudly South African. And I did, allude to that earlier on in terms of what his contribution is going to be. And these are the presentations that we have lined up. And so with that said, please help me welcome to the podium. I was tempted to say to the stage, to the podium, Mrs. Dimagazo Manuela, who is Director, Be Leisure Africa, who will be looking into supporting women in expanding their horizon. Thank you so much, Dimagazo, for joining us. A warm welcome to you. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Makumalo, and I'm great and happy to see you again. Happy. Just as your name says.
Thank you so much.
Yes, I just want to acknowledge Saki CEO and Mr. Zamtlaga, GEP CEO, as well as the CEO for Proudly SA, Mr. Mashimbe. I'm just going to also take from what program director you just said, and also the CEO. And I like the fact that, inclusivity and diversity, it came out very strong, including the transformation, because us as women entrepreneurs, that is the element, that we are actually, I don't think much has been done in that space. However, we took it upon ourselves and to say, what is it that we can do, to position ourselves as women in businesses, and working with various stakeholders in terms of making sure that we reach our goals. Let me just start by introducing Leisure Africa, which is a concept that drives trade and investment through travel, which is tourism. However, when we talk about the trade and investment within, being driven by the tourism sector, we are not only focusing on infrastructure or any project that is only on tourism related, but we are cutting across, because for one to do business in any country, or for one to do any business within any province, you travel, and traveling is the one that unlocks the opportunities that, you can learn about them. And as Leisure Africa, we are within various countries in the continent and regions. So because we also looked at how we can leverage on the AFCFTA, as it has been introduced. We know about the ITEF, which is coming in the next week. So we looked at the areas of how we can, as women, grow our businesses within Africa and also outside. Of course, as I said, we're working with various stakeholders and various partners. And our services, or say our principles, are very much intertwined to the ESG, the environment, social, and governance, whereby we believe that for each and every investment that will be coming in our country or coming in the continent, it should be very much supporting or, integrate the businesses of women, that they can benefit out of it. We came to understand that in so many instances, there are businesses that are like being operating within communities. They are based within, like I will just give a practical example with many malls that we find within our local communities, whereby if we have to engage and try to find out in terms of the supply chain, how many SMEs, which are local SMEs, are supplying that particular mall, you know, the shops within the mall, you will find that I don't know if percentage-wise, it can be less than 10%, if not 20%. So those are the issues that we as, you know, Leisure, although we are not an organization, we are a business, but a business that is focusing on working with organizations like, you know, the organizations here. We are members of Proudly SA, from the product House of Delicacy, where we do the non-alcoholic wines. And I might start say, you know, we applaud Proudly SA for the good work that you do all the time, because I know we get to go to the places and our product being very much exposed, you know, to various markets, whereas we just pay 500, you know, annual subscription the whole year, and the benefits are much higher than that. So when you spoke about program director, you spoke about affiliation, which is very much important for one to grow their businesses. We also look at the ecosystem approach as Leisure. So because of the understanding in terms of the trade and investment, whenever we are having the forums, we also look at you know, the master classes, where we will do the master classes on you know, export readiness, how you can access, I mean, you can start exporting, what is that you have to look at. We are doing that with the ITC International Trade Center as our partner. And we also, right now, we've been engaging a lot with the DTIC, since we are having a lineup of the trade and investment forums that are going to be happening in various countries. In January, we're looking at Cote d'Ivoire during the AFCON, where we will be running the Trade and Investment Forum as a side event. We are working on that one together with the Embassy of Cote d'Ivoire here in South Africa. And we're looking at the DTIC and how they can support women businesses to be able to travel to those various countries with their products and their services, so they can start selling. And we also working very close, you know, with OWIT. OWIT is an organization for women in international trade that is based in Canada, and we've got chapters in various countries, in US, in Brussels, and in South Africa. I mean, in Africa, we've got 9 chapters, and Egypt is going to be launching next week during ITEF, when we will be attending the ITEF conference. With the OWIT International, we are looking at unlocking opportunities, not only in Africa, but even outside of Africa. And at this moment, I think we've been doing, you know, great in that space, because we've been working very close with the head office, which introduced us to US Commercial, of which they also introduced organizations like the USAID in terms of getting commodities, you know, to improve women who are in commodities space, you know, with the equipment, equip them with the equipment, because as we talk in support, I know GEP is very much strong in that as well, you know, in supporting the SMMEs to be ready. I remember 3 years ago, we did a program with GEP through Women of Value Southern Africa, whereby we had 50 cooperatives that were being developed. So the introduction to the with the US Commercial, it is indeed to get other key stakeholders to come on board, so they can also assist in terms of funding with the equipment, you know, setting up of the agribusiness hubs, so we can be able to come up with the commodities that are ready to be exported and, you know, to be supplied to the big markets. And as Leisure Africa, the other element that we have introduced, it is what we call halal tourism. So with the halal tourism, we actually wanting, because when we looked at the women businesses, especially with those businesses that are within the hospitality industries. They are missing the big market of the halal clientele, of which we know when it comes to that market is very big. And in most cases, when we were doing the research, engaging with our women in that space, they did mention, you know, the fact that they don't know how to service that market. So as Pleasure, we then entered into an agreement with the Halal Trade and Marketing Center in Dubai, you know, to run the virtual 10 hours training. It's a certificate which issues the certificate of attendance, and the first session happening from the 20th to the 25th of November. You know, looking at, you know, making sure that women, they gain knowledge in terms of how they can be able to take an advantage on that market. The other part that we've been looking at, because everything goes back to what I started with, you know, when I spoke about being intertwined with the ESG, it is that ecosystem enterprise development, where we are saying, Mr. Zamkaka is here, and I'm happy that she's part of this. And I know Proudly SA is already doing that. And talking to Saki, being the one that is dealing with the membership, which is corporate, the investors. It is to say, when we start looking at any project, any you know, opportunity that is coming in our country, we should make sure that that is very much, whatever that is going to be done, it is aligned to the skill of our local SMEs, whereby they shouldn't be at the end. You know, I'll just give a practical example. And when I started with my presentation, to say, whenever there's any project that is happening within the communities, there are times when we will even be asking ourselves, what is happening there? You know, you are just seeing, you know, the construction starting to take place, and you are wondering what is coming. And that is not how it should be done. And I think that is where Saki comes in terms of, because they engage a lot with the government on the policy level, you know, the local municipalities, how we create an environment where our local people, they know what is happening and they are made ready, you know, the readiness program in terms of making sure that they are integrated into the projects that are coming so they can benefit, you know, with the focus of women being able to become the suppliers of the services and the products during the construction and post the construction of that particular project. So us as Blazer, we work with Women of Value Southern Africa in terms of the enterprise and supply development program, of which is the program that I mentioned earlier that we have been running, and we have done that successfully with the GEP. And I would like to conclude by saying, we are here saying there's no way that whatever that we are talking about, you know, we can be able to achieve alone. We cannot work in silos anymore. We are looking at building a strong ecosystem, being from the national level to the regional level, working with key stakeholders in making sure that women are positioned in the mainstream economy, not only of the country, but also of the continent. Because as you said, there's quite a number of things, you know, opportunities that are out there, starting with South Africa. I always say, I don't know my country. As an entrepreneur, I'm talking on behalf of other entrepreneurs, but I'm also talking on behalf of myself to say, how much do I know about the opportunities in the Eastern Cape? You know, and that is where we have to start. Because for me to do business within interprovincial, I don't need a visa. I don't need a passport. Sometimes I don't even need to fly. I can just drive, you know, to that particular province. And that is something that we will be engaging we started engaging SACI to say, can we look at having the Interprovincial Trade and Investment Summit, whereby we will be able to talk about the opportunities within the 9 provinces, and we can take an advantage of that. And as women, knowing that, when those opportunities are there, we are ready to take an advantage of that. So I just want to take this opportunity to thank the host and, to be invited as Blazer African. We are looking forward to strengthen our relationship, with key stakeholders who are also looking at the economy, because as women businesses thrive, the economy will also thrive, not only in Gauteng, but in South Africa, and as we extend and expand our businesses within the continent and globally. I thank you. And for anyone who would like to contact us, we are on the website, blazerafrica.com, and also info@blazerafrica.com. Thank you so much, Program Director. And once again, I just want to stress on the inclusivity and diversity, which Mr. Mokoki, the CEO for SACI, has mentioned, and say we are here to work with you, to work with you, and to make sure that we grow together. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Sis Timakatso Manuela. And to your point that women it is absolutely critical that women are included in mainstream economy, not because of a shame, somebody's feeling sorry for us, but because it's a no-brainer. It has to happen. And to the point I made earlier on when I said, as a business person who may be sitting in this platform, associating yourself within your business, rather, with entities that are mandated to assist, SMMEs and entrepreneurs and all of that, you are a perfect example of that. A member of SACI, obviously, but also a member of Proudly South African. If there's one person that I know does not rest, is you, because you show up at every engagement that that we are part of as Proudly South African. Thank you so much for your valuable contribution. And there is a request online where they are requesting that you please share the link to your presentation, or a link to your business, rather, to your business, to PE Leisure. If you could do that, that'll be great, please, Hosti Makatso. You can share with the team. All right, thank you so much. Just a quick question for Mr. Mokoki, if you're still online. So I have Tiago Kuno. I'm hoping that I'm not butchering your surname. Says that thank you, sir, for thank you, sir. Some of us, we needed to hear this information. How do I become part of your database? He has a gaming center business company. Is Mr. Mokoki?
Yeah. No, that's very easy. We've recruited a client, a member already. So you simply go to our website, SACI website, South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and then you'll find the link that leads you to how you join membership and all the benefits that go with that. And then someone else obviously will call you, but otherwise, you can also put your contact details on this chat, and some of the SACI people are listening right now, and they will take your details and call you back. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. There you have it, Diego. We send your details on this platform. The SACI team is online. They will assist you. Failing which, you are welcome to go to the SACI website where you'll find the information you need. All right. With that, without further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Saki Zamxaka to grab the mic, so to speak. Mr. Zamxaka is the Chief Executive Officer, Gauteng Enterprise Propeller, and he will be taking us through the funding services available to SMMEs, within his organization. Thank you, Mr. Zamxaka, and fantastic to see you again.
No, thank you.
I see your office is a bus.
Yes, no, it's always busy here, but thank you, Happy, and your team for the invite, Sasha and them. It's a very interesting conversation and partnership with the Chamber of Commerce. It's difficult for me to call it Saki because I'm Saki. um, so thanks to everyone, Ellen, who's spoken, Dimakatso, and Mashimbe, who's still about to speak. The Gauteng Enterprise Propeller, maybe to start from the beginning, is a development finance institution owned by the Gauteng provincial government. It's been largely funded from the provincial fiscus, but we've had partnerships, which I'll get into, where we've partnered with third parties, both government and the private sector, to put in funds into largely small businesses. The mandate of the entity is to provide support to small businesses in various forms. At this stage, a lot of our efforts have been providing what we've called investment products, which are typically simply debt and grant, and what we call business development support, which is mostly in the form of grants. And in those grants, we pay for various things. So it may be a business that is in a township and is looking for certain equipment to expand. It may be somebody who wants certain training that makes them qualify for something to increase either compliance or output of their business. So those are the various things that we pay for. The loan book of the business, which has been an indicator of our ability to lend, which is based on the revenue we get every year, has generally been small. And for that reason, for concentration, our loans are typically at a maximum of 5 million per transaction. And then the grants are typically up to 50,000 rands per transaction, except for youth fund, and I'll get into the youth fund. So we generally target smaller businesses, but where a lot of impact has been in the past 18 to 24 months has been on what we call contract finance. These are people who have purchase orders and they need working capital to fulfill those, or they've been awarded contracts and they also need working capital. And what we've done there is that we typically then don't rely on the strength of the entrepreneur from a financial point of view. We rely on the issuer of the purchase order or the contract. So we will then say, okay, this is a government department. It has ability to pay. They don't have cash flow issues. Or this is a listed company, it doesn't have cash flow issues. It gets a little complicated if it's an unlisted entity, because then we'll need to get audited financials of that entity, because for government and listed companies, those are published. So we're able to then determine independently what the financial viability of the issue of the contract or the purchase order is. And as I'm saying, that has generally been very successful, because a lot of entrepreneurs have the ability to get the work and contracts, but they don't always have the working capital to fulfill them. But of course, we do a bit of due diligence on the operational capability of the individual to also fulfill the contract. So that's generally been that. So that's a debt instrument. We generally reference on prime. So our products are around prime. And it is just simply a reference point. Most of the money is from government, but as we get repayments and some of the interest income, we are then able to recapitalize the business, because the plan is that at some point it must be financially viable without having to completely rely on government grants. We do term loans as well, and the term is typically up to a maximum of 60 months, again, linked to cash flows. And we do consider payment holidays of less than a year, where there may be negative cash flows when the business starts. but there we then need to be able to demonstrate that there actually is affordability at a particular point. So that's and then we do franchises and other forms of businesses that we finance. Applications are online. Every application is online. Even when we do partnerships, we'll put on the website, and it will explain how you apply for those partnerships. We also do have branches, about 6 of them, and if you go to the website, you will see if you need to physically go and visit one of our branches, and you want to apply individually. Then on the partnerships, the province about 2 to 3 years ago gave GEP 250 million rands, and the idea was to form partnerships. So we've leveraged that to about 600-700 million through the IDC. We set up a 400 million fund with the IDC that we called Township Economy Partnership Fund. And that, in essence, became largely a fund of funds. Though we were looking at direct applications, we prioritized those applications where people were bringing money on the table, a minimum of R1 for R1, and that was fully subscribed. And some of the businesses we funded out of that is Bridge Taxi Finance. They finance the taxi industry. But it wasn't just financing. We kept the amount of interest that they can charge. So there was a ceiling because we wanted them to be more affordable than other people who've been fairly aggressive on how they've priced on interest. We funded entities that do purchase order finance. Create Capital is one of them, which was a black entity that through the funding practically doubled their book and what they were able to lend. And then there are others, Spartan, Profit Share Partners. But again, that was increasing our pool and network of partners that can do that. Another one is called Indlu Living. They do developments in townships of people who want to do rentals in their properties. So some of them may do them in the backyard, and some of them will revamp the entire property and make it rental. And it's a very interesting scheme because a lot of township properties have been battling to get finance because either title deed issues are a challenge, bulk infrastructure is a challenge, but also for traditional financiers, and they can't finance it as a home loan because it has features of being a business. So in essence, Indlu funds this almost as a business. There will be a 10-year agreement on the funding. In the first 5 years, the split is 90-10% in favor of Indlu, and then in the last 5 years, it's 90-10% in favor of the owner of the property. And then at the end of the 10-year period, you now own a property, but they offer a complete solution where they design, construct, they will market the properties and do collections and then do facilities management. So those are some of the things that we've been doing to sort of increase some sort of cash generating businesses in the townships that people can do. So that was that fund we did with the ITC. And then on top of it, SME came and put in 100 million that also then got dispersed through the other funding partners. But as I'm saying, that fund has now been fully subscribed. But those who are interested in going to some of these entities and are based in Gauteng, they can go and apply to them for the various products that I've mentioned. And then we have a youth fund, which is a fund with the NYDA. It's a 20 million rands fund, which goes up to a maximum of R1 million per transaction. Half of it is a loan and half of it is a grant. Again, the cap of R1 million was concentration because it's a small fund, so we can't afford to just have a fund that will end up funding one or two businesses. So we're trying to spread it across, but we also acknowledge that some of the businesses may not survive too much gearing, and hence a portion of it is a grant. So those are generally the kinds of things that we do. We've been motivating to the province to get additional funds because with the allocations that we get to run out of the allocated funds before the year is over. So hopefully in this mid-year adjustment, we will get additional funds to allow us. And I mention this because at times people may apply and we don't have cash. It's not because of anything wrong. It's just because of the demand. The demand for funds far outstrips what is available to us physically as the GEP. But we work closely with SIFA. SIFA goes up to 15 million rands a transaction on small businesses as well. So we're basically in the same market. And you have NEF. I think NEF goes to about 50. And the IDC and TBSA don't have limits on what they can do, but you have to then fit within what is on their mandate. There are certain things they fund and certain things they don't fund. Us as GEP, we are sector agnostic. As long as a business makes sense, we will consider funding it. So there aren't any sectors that we exclude on funding. Thank you. You're on mute, Happy.
There we go. Thank you so much. Thanks. Thank you so much for your invaluable insight into this, Saki, and what you've shared with us. Let me start here. You're quite right. Saki and Saki. That's a bit of a situation then. Eh? You're still better off, and I'll tell you why. Try to have a name like Happy, and then you are involved in a car crash like I was, and then you go to the police station to go report the case, and then you get to the counter and say, "Hello, Mr. Officer, I'm Happy, and I'm here to report a case." And he's like, "My sister, you are happy. What do you mean?" I'm like, "No, focus. My name is Happy, and I'm here to report." And I said, "Don't worry, officer. My name is Makumal. I think that's better." And so, thank you so much. So, I'm sure you agree that, you shared with us financial and non-financial programs you have. Access to market is a big one, right? Access to market for the businesses that you help is a critical one. You may, and here's my view. I don't know what you think of this. Unlocking potential. You may, run a good business. You may relatively well, but you may have the experience, but it takes much more than that. Discipline. You've got to be business savvy. Focus driven. You cannot be a general dealer. In the sense that you can't, that's not an option. You've got to find your niche. You can't build houses today and bake cakes tomorrow. Find your niche. And like Mr. Mugoki said earlier on, said that know the purpose of your business. Why do you exist? What is your niche? What is your strength? And that's how you kind of like get closer to unlocking your business potential. Thank you so much. I do have a question for you before I let you go on. It's more a request to your link as a Gauteng popular that people are able to go to your website and see the kind of work that you do on a broader platform, because we need to give 4 hours of you to unpack everything that you do. I'm assuming that your team is online. Will they help us with that?
They should be there, but just to make it easy, it's gep.co.za. That's our website.
Okay, all right. Short and easy, gep.co.za.
Yes.
That's where we can find you. Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm just going to quickly, as I introduce our next speaker, check what's going on YouTube and on Facebook in case there's a burning comment or issue that is desired that for you. I see the team has put it on screen, www.gep.co.za. Thank you so much, Saki. Great to engage with you as usual.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Saki, please may I have you back online? I do have a question from Terry Kruger, who wants to know, he says, many thanks for the presentation. He is from Synergetics Sustainable Solutions. So he's saying thank you for the presentation. He found it very valuable. But Isaac in Talco says, what is the quickest turnaround time for funding from GEP?
So turnaround times are often dependent on the information that has been submitted. We try, because a lot of the work for us is manual. It's not as automized as, for example, the other guys who do purchase orders. So purchase orders, we try and do them within a week, at most 2 weeks. Purchase order finance, because those often the delivery is within a fairly short period of time. And then on the term loans, our target is 30 days to have the transactions done. But as I'm saying, that's always also very much dependent on the quality of the information that has been submitted. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Saki, for that. So Isaac, here you go. The turnaround times is described by Saki, but also it's largely dependent on the kind of information you submit as per their requirements, and not leaving anything out and wasting time and all of that, because that has a direct impact on the overall turnaround time, as you can imagine. All right. And so with that said, I think there's more stuff online. Let me just have a quick look. All right, we can continue. And now it gives me great pleasure to invite onto the podium the CEO, proudly South African, Mr. Eustace Mashimbie, who will take us through why we exist in the first place and how we fit into the issues around unlocking your business potential. I think it is the backbone of why we exist. We care as proudly South African about the well-being of businesses, local businesses, that they firstly make it, and in the course of making it, they then create more jobs and sustain the jobs that they have for the betterment of the economy. Eustace, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Welcome. Please take it away.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Makumalo. I caught that discussion around how you introduce yourself at the police station. I'll stick to Makumalo.
Please.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to fellow panelists who spoke before I got this opportunity to speak to all of you. Thank you for all of you. Thank you to all of you who have been able to join us this morning. We really appreciate your taking time out of your schedules to spend the morning with us. I'm going to put up a few slides and take you through what Proudly South African is about, and it's introduced. I'm the CEO of Proudly South African. My name is Eustace, and we're a buy local campaign. And why we exist is to have entrepreneurs like the one you see on screen. You see how big a smile she has, with a board that thanks those who are able to buy from her. I mean, as an entrepreneur, you know that the biggest thing for you when you start the business is, irrespective of what kind of systems, equipment, and processes you put in place, if no one walks through those doors to buy from you, defeats the purpose. And that's the role of Proudly South African, is to ensure that if anyone is making a purchasing decision and there's a locally made alternative and option they choose that and they keep businesses like this alive so that jobs can be created. And in the process, we can retain those jobs that already exist. The reason why this campaign was formed as far back as 1998, a decision was taken to start a buy local campaign. The then president at the time was Nelson Mandela, and he convened a presidential job summit to try and find ways to deal with the unemployment problem as it was at that time. And we continue to see this problem persisting. And so one of the outcomes of that presidential job summit that was hosted in 1998 was to form a buy local campaign. And so Proudly South African then opened its doors in 2001. And, the intention is to have a campaign that advocates for the buying of locally made products, gets to every single person who makes a purchasing decision, and we influence their thinking such that they choose a locally made product. Because as you can see, the unemployment numbers, as you had them, at the end of Q2 of this current calendar year, is that you still have, persistently high levels of unemployment, with the most affected being the youth and women. And so if you look at an industry like manufacturing, which is labor intensive, it has the ability to absorb a lot of those people into jobs. We know that the pandemic did cause a bit of harm to the manufacturing industry, but even before we go to the pandemic, the manufacturing industry had already shared a lot of jobs. We continue to see a lot of jobs being lost. In fact, the latest data related to manufacturing points to the fact that we have slowed down in terms of manufacturing simply because there's no uptake. No one is going to go and invest in any business and manufacture any product or render any service if there's not going to be uptake. And so we need to get this labor-intensive industry back on track. This is just an example of an industry that is part of the broader, a sector that is part of the broader manufacturing industry. The subsector that I focused on for today is furniture. And if you look at the furniture industry, you can see that, you can see that what did I do? Oh yeah, sorry. You can see that it had 3,500 factories making furniture items in the country previously, and that reduced to 1,200 factories. That 3,500 factories reduced to 1,100 factories over a 20-year period. And this is because we chose to buy imported items. We also have seen that in terms of the number of jobs and employees in that industry, we used to have about 50,000 people making furniture items in the country. That has been reduced to 25,000. So a lot of those jobs have been lost, predominantly as a result of us. Sorry, my system keeps jumping up and down. As a result of us choosing locally made, choosing to buy imported items as opposed to locally made products. If you consider the fact that to make a furniture item, the value chain involves a lot of components, a lot of raw materials that come from other industries. It points to the fact that jobs are not only lost by the furniture manufacturer themselves, so as opposed to just the 25,000 jobs that were lost by the 2,400 factories that closed down as a result of us buying imported furniture. Jobs were lost across all of these industries that are part of the value chain. I mean, in economics, we were taught about the multiply effect. So what is the impact of one industry on other industries that are part of its value chain? The plastics industry contributes synthetic fibers, natural hides, fibers, hides, and skins. The clothing and textile industry contributes textiles and leather items that are utilized by furniture manufacturers. To make a furniture item, you require metal parts that come from the metal industry. And so jobs are lost across many industries. If you look at the value chain, and where the jobs are meant to be coming from. And so our mandate is quite straightforward, it's quite simple. If there's anyone making a purchasing decision, we need to get to them, influence the purchasing decision, get them to buy a locally made product so that jobs can be retained in those businesses. And this phenomenon of buying local is not unique to us. It's tried and tested across the world. You have seen buy local campaigns emerge for countries, for towns, for regions. When the Proudly South African campaign was formed, in fact, when we opened our doors in 2001, the model that was utilized and was copied and replicated in South Africa at the time was the one from Australia. There's the campaign known as the Australian Made campaign. We utilize the Proudly South African logo to identify products that are made in South Africa. They utilize the kangaroo. And so anyone living in Australia, when they see the kangaroo, they know that this is a product they need to support because it supports their livelihoods, their jobs in their country, and supports their economy. The best example of a country, an economic powerhouse that we are all aware of, that really has gone all out for many, many years, close to 90 years now, where they've put this localization or buying local or local procurement at the heart of their macroeconomic policies, the United States. As far back as 1933, they came up with legislation that talks to them buying local, as best as possible whenever they need to make purchasing decisions. As long as they know they make a product in that country, they want those who make purchasing decisions to buy that product. Even the current president, so irrespective of the views that Trump had, that President Biden does not have, does not matter whether you're a Democrat or you're a Republican in the United States, if you take office in that country, this is one of the things that we have seen them consistently all agreeing on. President Biden, within the first week of coming into office, already signed into law executive orders strengthening the Buy American provision. And so it's an important component of the economic policy. We have a lot of benefits that a lot of studies have flagged for us as being the consequence of us buying local or us having localization at the heart of our economic policies. And the first one is the obvious one. Again, I have an image of entrepreneurs who are smiling and have opened their shop and they're open for business, and they're happy that when you buy from them, those people that they've employed in their business, they'll be able to retain. And as you continue buying from them, as a result of them having to meet the demand or the need that exists as a result of us buying from them, they can then create new job opportunities. Buying local or localization helps all of these young people who are the most affected when it comes to unemployment to acquire skills. I spoke at a conference and spoke to shop stewards at a conference hosted by a union last week. And I said to them, and it was a Thursday, and I said, and it's the same as today, if you go to any township now, if you walk around and you drive around, you will mistaken today for a holiday, the holiday that we've been asking the president to give us, and is only giving to us on the 15th of December. You will think that day has arrived already because of the number of people who are unemployed. And those people roaming the streets, don't have any form of skills. They're not in training. They're not in any formal education institution. And so as a result, they don't acquire any skills. So as we ensure that the service providers that render high quality locally made services, these producers who manufacture high quality locally made products, as we continue to buy from them, they will then be able to absorb these new, employees, and then they can acquire skills in the process. They can impart skills onto those guys, and those skills can be utilized by the young people and the most affected by unemployment to create new job opportunities for themselves by starting their own businesses or improving their living standards by securing other opportunities for themselves, better opportunities. And so we did a study. And basically, the study was meant to look at the impact of us buying local, and we utilized socioeconomic matrix that said if we are to invest at least 10% more in manufacturing as a labor-intensive industry, by buying at least 10% more on locally made products, what would the impact be? And the impact is that the contribution to the GDP by manufacturing would increase by 13%. There'd be 9% more to the fiscal or to the fiscus. Fiscal revenue would increase by 9%, which means that government will have more by way of taxes that they collect from individuals that will have acquired employment opportunities, as well as from businesses who will then be doing so well that their tax liability increases, and government then has more at their disposal to render much needed services to all of us. And in terms of number of jobs, just by us increasing our activity in the form of buying local, especially directed at the manufacturing industry by 10%, you can create 75,300 new jobs in manufacturing itself. But because manufacturing, like I said when I spoke about the furniture industry earlier on, you will then be able to create 11,500 jobs in mining because it supplies a lot of the raw materials and components that are required in the manufacturing industry. And the agricultural industry is also another one that supplies a lot of, the raw materials and components required in that industry. So you'll have another 10,000 jobs in agriculture. So overall, there'll be an 8% increase in employment creation just by us increasing our investment in manufacturing and buying local by 10%. And so it's a no-brainer. It's clear we need to buy local because it will help create jobs. And that is based on research done by a renowned economist, Dr. Iraja Bedian, and not by me and the Proudly South African team. And so our focus areas as Proudly South African is to ensure that if there's anyone buying any product for government, buying for the private sector, buying as a member of the general public, we educate them on the importance of them buying local. We have programs tailor-made for each of these sectors of society that seek to ensure that we increase levels of local procurement in each of these industries. We also have as our focus area the need to ensure that those who want to buy local can easily access those products. So as a member of Proudly South African, you participate in an array of programs that seek to ensure that, irrespective of which sector of society wants to buy local, they can easily find you and find your products and your services. And so as a member of Proudly South African, you have to go through this vetting process that gives an assurance to us that you comply with these 4 key criteria, because that is what we then take to the market, to say to the market, buy this locally made product, trust this service provider, because they've been vetted. They've been vetted, their products have gone through a process that tells us that the product itself contains sufficient local content in that in producing the product, where the raw materials exist in the country, these have been sourced in South Africa. Where the components exist in the country, they've been sourced in South Africa, and the value addition or the conversion thereof into the final product has happened in South Africa, and jobs have been created in the process. We also give a guarantee to the public that you can trust that the product is of a high quality nature. I mean, if you look at the Proudly South African logo, as I have it on screen, it's made up of the colors of the flag of the Republic of South Africa, telling you instantly that the product is made in South Africa. But the tick gives you an assurance that it's a high quality product, you can trust it. Before this session, I presented to the clothing and textile, leather, and footwear cluster in KZN, and one of the attendees and delegates was telling me about how they have for the past few months went on a few outward missions and participated in pavilions, national pavilions outside of South Africa, together with members of Proudly South African, who, on the strength of utilizing their logo and putting up their certificate of membership at their stands, buyers trust them because of this communication that we've always put out that says the product that carries the Proudly South African logo, or a service provider that utilizes the logo on their corporate material, their leaflets, their website, and everywhere else, can be trusted because the quality of the service or the product will be as required by that industry. And so it's one of the biggest benefits of being a member of Proudly South African. Members of Proudly South African also have to help us reduce carbon footprint by ensuring that they reuse material, they recycle, they dispose of waste responsibly and help us reduce the carbon footprint in the country. And lastly, they treat their workers fairly and as prescribed by the Basic Conditions of Employment Act. And so in order to turn the tide as an economy and ensure that we reverse this unemployment challenge and this lack of growth in the economy, we need SMMEs to really take center stage. If you look at developed economies, more than 90% of jobs in those economies are created by small businesses. Government must just create a conducive environment, and we need businesses to take center stage. So if you look at the SMME support ecosystem, in fact, this is basically the business support ecosystem. As a business person, you will get access to all of these things. All of these are available. Some of those people who presented before me touched on all of this. The CEO of GEP spoke now about some of this. You will get access to funding, access to information, access to ways in which you can protect your IP and your trademark, increase your productivity, comply with tax and statutory obligations. But the most important of all of this is the access to markets. And that's where the Proudly South African campaign sits. And we support everyone who complies with our criteria and who makes a product locally and is of a high quality nature, irrespective of the fact that there might even be a new entrant, or they might be introducing a new product to the market. There might be a transformed entity that buyers would ordinarily not trust. But because they've been vetted by us, they're a member of Proudly South African, we support them by making available an array of access to market opportunities. These are segmented into these three broad categories. The advent of shopping from the comfort of your home or the comfort of where your office is or your business is really growing. And so we have found partnerships with online stores that are targeting consumers, as well as online stores that are targeting businesses. So if you have an entity that is targeting consumers, we have all of these partnerships: Micro Marketplace, Zando, Zulzi, Made by Artisans, One Day Only, Loot, and many others, where we have concluded agreements that says they will help you as a member of Proudly South African list your product, take away the listing fee, because we then take care of that through the partnership we have with them. You can list your product, keep it on there, sell to consumers. And the biggest thing is that when consumers go onto these platforms, they can easily see your product and identify it as one that is made in South Africa because of it having the logo next to it. We've had lots of successes, lots of sales by members of Proudly South African who have gone on to list on these platforms. BizMed is a B2B platform, so independent hospitals and clinics and those in the medical industry who are looking for products know that this is a medical marketplace where they can go find their products. Anything related to that space you can find on there, from medical devices, medical equipment, and anything that they utilize to run their medical facilities can be found on there. So as a member of Proudly South African, you can list on there, and buyers from each of these entities can then easily find you. We have a program targeted at the private sector where we buy space for our members to exhibit at our cost. We carry the cost for you to be at expos, at markets, at trade fairs. We curate our own exhibitions, including the Wine Expo, our flagship, the Buy Local Expo, which happens in March, where we invite buyers to come in. We do matchmaking ahead of those events. You already tell us ahead of time who you ideally want to visit your stand, so that they can come see the product, feel the product, interact with you as the entrepreneur, and eventually list your product on their platforms. I mean, for the Wine Expo, which is our own initiative, it happens in July every year. We get buyers from hotels, from retail stores, from restaurants, and any other entity out there that would ideally be suitable for you to go sell your product at, to come in and interact with your product, and ideally give you shelf space and give you an opportunity to sell your product to them. And that is what we do over and above, going to the private sector and asking them to commit to job creation. We have this campaign known as Will You Commit to Job Creation, where these are just some of the examples. We've asked the banks to give us a commitment to buy their furniture, uniform, promotional material, stationery locally. We've asked independent schools to buy their uniform, furniture, reading material, stationery in the country. We've had private hospitals and independent hospitals buy linen, bedding, uniform, medical equipment locally. Automotive manufacturers who make cars in the country to look at where the components are coming from, the machinery that they utilize, the uniform, where it's available in the country. We urge them to buy this locally. As retailers, we've asked for shelf space. Retailers that sell FMCG products, that sell furniture products, that sell clothing items, we've engaged with all of them. And there is an increased level of locally made products on each of their shelves. And we've asked manufacturers to look at where the packaging and raw material comes from. And those are just some of the successes we've had. In March this year, we partnered with Presidency to celebrate the companies that have given us these local commitments. We've come up with a portal known as MAP, where our members are then listed on that portal. So it works in the same way as the CSD. The difference is the CSD is targeted at the public sector. So anyone in government who wants to buy knows that they go into the CSD, they do a search. If they want to buy furniture, they will do a search for furniture manufacturers If they're looking for chairs, they will say chair manufacturers, they'll give them a list. So for the private sector, we've introduced this, which is going to be the equivalent of the CSD in the private sector. Anyone in the private sector looking to buy a locally made product can go on there, do a search, and it will give them a list of companies that they can then go and buy from. We anticipate that we'll really hit the market aggressively with this portal from the beginning of 2024. We are currently loading companies onto the platform. We're engaging with our members to make sure that, you know, as many of their products that qualify are listed on there. And alongside that conversation is we are talking to buyers in the private sector and asking them to list and register on there so that they can then utilize the platform to find suppliers, but also to advertise tenders such that when they advertise a tender on that platform, only those companies who are registered on MAP, which are local producers and service providers, will see the tender, to take away this inability of our guys to compete with importers, where importers are dumping products at ridiculously low prices. And so this portal is going to be very critical. So to summarize, we secure localization commitments from the private sector. We ask them to identify items that they're going to buy locally. We get companies on our books. We partner with industry bodies, and Saki is one of those partnerships that we have, where we work with them to get companies on their books to participate in this program and respond to the tenders that will have been advertised by the private sector. As a result of the work we do, we end up with a situation where the private sector will then be buying local. We have pitching sessions where we look at entities that represent a lot of buying. FASA is the Franchise Association of South Africa, and it can be a franchise such as Maika, which is a hardware, such as Inspector Car, which sells cars, can be a food franchise. The more popular ones that we know, Chicken Lick and Nando's and all of those guys. It can be anyone who runs a franchising business. They make purchasing decisions daily. What we do is we allow you as members of Proudly South African to get an opportunity to go pitch to them. 20 companies at a time, pitch to these companies. Some success stories have come out of that, where they've then been able to be given purchase orders and opportunities to go and become suppliers to franchisors and franchises across the country. And that is one of the programs we run. We do this across many sectors and many industries. Franchise Association is just one. We have a relationship with the Tourism Business Council. We have a relationship with the Consumer Goods Council of South Africa. And all of those partnerships represent a lot of buying. And so we treasure them because they allow our members to be able to sell to them. In the public sector space, government previously designated each of these items as items that they're going to buy locally when they make purchasing decisions, because the capacity exists in the country. And what we do in that space is we look out for tenders that are advertised by government for each of these items. We then identify local manufacturers in our books that we send the tenders to. Lots of success stories, tenders that our members would have missed. But because our system works on an algorithm, is an automated system, we find the tenders. If you register with us as a supplier of, or as a manufacturer of T-shirts, if a tender for T-shirts comes out, we'll send it to you. And you can then bid for the tender. Even for technical items and industrial items such as transformers and steel components, we pick up every single tender from any provincial government department, national government department, a local government department, even state-owned companies. And we send those tenders to our guys for them to bid and respond to those tenders. But alongside that process, we have a conversation with the government entity to say to them, when you issue the tenders, because these items were previously designated by government as those that you will buy locally, please include in the tenders a provision that says you will buy the items locally and only bids from local producers will be considered. And as a result, you have a government receiving responses of bids from local producers and government buying locally. As I conclude, I want to quickly touch on two things. The first one is this perception out there that it's expensive to become a member of Proudly South African. And for all of those benefits, and I focused only on the access to market benefits, there are many other benefits that we have as Proudly South African, but in the interest of time, I sort of tried to summarize. You only need to pay 500 rands if your turnover is up to 5 million rands, and this is per annum. The most that you ever have to pay to Proudly South African for membership purposes is 100,000 rands, and that is if your turnover is 100 million rands and more. And so it's really not expensive if you consider the array of benefits and the value that we bring to any business. And as a marketing campaign, we have a responsibility to educate consumers on the importance of buying local. They need to understand that if you buy an item that says made in China, you are supporting jobs in China. That's why they have 1.4 billion people living in that country, but the unemployment levels are as high as between 3 to 6% at any given time, never higher than that. And so we need to ensure that South Africans understand the economic impact of their purchasing decisions, but most importantly, that we have an economy that we need to protect. That the next generation needs to be handed over an economy that can sustain them, an economy that they can be proud of. And so we have rolled out a campaign known as Second Half. And the reason why we have called this campaign Second Half is because if you think about the economy of South Africa, even before we got to the pandemic, the economy was in trouble. We already had lost a lot of jobs, and the unemployment levels were quite high. The rating agencies had downgraded us already. We were already in a recession just before we got to that lockdown. And so we see all of that, as an indication that things need to be done differently in the second half, because we see that period as the first half. If you think of an analogy of a sporting game, let's use rugby. I mean, I'm a big soccer person, but I'll use rugby because of the euphoria around the Springboks and the Rugby World Cup that we've just gone through. If you look at the semi-final of the Bokke as an example, in the first half against England in that semi-final, we didn't do well. And as a result, in the second half, just in the last 12, 13 minutes, we turned it around and we won the game. And that's an indication of how the halftime can be utilized to change tactics, to change the playing personnel, and to come out stronger in that second half and do things differently. And it's the same thing with our economy. We didn't do well before the pandemic. We then go to the pandemic and we see that period where we were all in our homes, where we were all in lockdown, where all industries closed down as halftime. And so as the economy has opened up and we emerge out of that period, we need to do things differently. Be like the Bokke. Do things differently in the second half and turn the economy around through our purchasing decisions. Even if you are buying without giving consideration as to where the product comes from. If it says to you, if the label says made in South Africa, you know you're contributing to jobs in the country. And that's what we're calling for. So let me quickly play for you the campaign, the TV ad that underpins the campaign that we're rolling out, which basically talks to us doing things differently in the second half.
There's a voice that is calling, loudly calling, day by day, the voice of the future.
When I started my business, all I wanted was to create jobs and a legacy for the next generation, because I see opportunity when others see impossibility.
It all started with a thought and then a seed in the garden, which grew into my very own farm that feeds the whole nation daily.
Cotton, silk, and a little bit of treasure, I create masterpieces that give South Africans an identity, comfort, and confidence, because when you look good, you feel good.
From the factory workers to the warehouse and then over the seas, I want to show the world what proudly South African looks like. It all started with just some ink on paper and inspiration to bring people together. With my furniture, I now help create spaces that are beautiful, comfortable, and authentic to human light and connection.
I've always been driven by curiosity. It fueled my dreams to create automobiles that accelerate our nation into greater possibilities and the beauty of the unknown.
I was born into a rainbow nation. My life has been full of colors and mixed flavors. And when I started my bakery, I wanted to share the joy with the world and with South Africans in particular.
All I ever dreamt of was to be a bird and fly high. And now I have the wings to help others fulfill their dreams of flying high too.
But it can only be a dream until you make it a reality. All they need is your faith, your trust, your loyalty, your appreciation.
And most importantly,
your support.
Because supporting local businesses
helps create jobs
and secures our future.
South Africa, their future is in your hands. So what are you going to do about it? Be proudly South African. Buy local to create jobs.
That is our campaign. I'm imagining that you are all clapping from wherever you're sitting because of how amazing the campaign is, but mostly because of the impact of the message on all of you. I hope it makes you think differently. You realize that the second half is really in your hands, Zanzi, and that we can all make a difference because we all make a purchasing decision of some sort. Every day there is something that you're buying for your home, for your business, for the company that employs you. Let's change our purchasing decisions and start giving consideration as to where the product comes from. If you want to become a member of Proudly South African, if you want to work with us, if you want us to help you find suppliers, contact us, info@proudlysa.co.za. Our numbers are on there, 011 327 7778. Proudlysa.co.za is our website. Follow us on all social media platforms at ProudlySA on Twitter, or rather X, and become a member of the campaign. Thank you very much, Program Director. I appreciate the opportunity given to me.
Thank you so much, Eustace. And just like you, I was hoping we are in a physical environment so we could hear that the hand clap after the campaign that you've shared with us, second half. And that's where I would like to end it. And that message from that commercial says, at least the question that our children are asking us is, or telling us, is that supporting local businesses help create jobs and secures our future. That's what the children are saying. So are you going to be mindful of making your purchasing decisions in favor of local product to ensure that the future of our children is secured, and to make sure that by the time they get to where we are, they're in a better position. And as per the South African say that says that it takes a village to raise a child. All of those children's future, we have a responsibility to ensure that we play a part and contribute to them having a better opportunity in life, a better take in life than we ever had. And so we're doing well on time. It's almost 12, but I want to just check and ask the PR team to check quickly on social media if there's anything that we need to address. I'm going to also request that all our speakers switch their cameras on so we can say a lovely, happy, pun intended, bokeh goodbye. Now that the euphoria and the camaraderie and the joy is still very much palpable, very much in the air still. And then I will request that the CEO of Proudly South African, Eustace Mashimbe, does the vote of thanks to everybody who attended and to our speakers this morning. Thank you so much, everybody. I do not see any comment further than what we already had earlier on, or a burning issue, or whatever the case may be. I'm just checking Facebook. Thank you so much, everybody, for indulging us. We hope you walk away from this session with a lot more than you anticipated. And keep doing the right thing. Buy local to create jobs, sustain the jobs that we have as a country. It takes all of us to turn our economy around. Eustace, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Happy. Firstly, thank you to you for facilitating the program for us and for making it possible to engage with business people out there to help them unlock their business potential, as per the title of our webinar this morning, to South African Council of Chamber and Industry, SACI, Mr. Alan Mukoki, my brother. Thank you very much for your time this morning. We appreciate the partnership we have with SACI. Appreciate the time you spent with us this morning. To our sister, a member of Proudly South African, Medima Katsomalwela. Thank you very much, sister, for your time this morning. We appreciate your continued support of the campaign. To the CEO of Gauteng Enterprise Propeller, Mr. Saki Zamtaga. Thank you. We appreciate it. As always, when we call on you, you avail yourself, and the programs you have as an agency of the Gauteng provincial government really go a long way in ensuring that entities stay alive and they continue to prosper. And to all of you who joined us this morning, thank you. We appreciate your time. We hope that you derived value. Do contact any of the entities that were here today for their respective offerings and ensure that you benefit from the various programs that are really tailor-made to provide support to you as business people and ensure that you can help us turn the economy around and much needed job opportunities can be created. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you, Stas. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you, Happy. Thank you to everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.